The Holy Gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ according to Luke. Jesus took with them Peter and John and James and went up to the mountain to pray. And while he was praying, the appearance of his face changed, and his clothes became dazzling white. Suddenly they saw two men, Moses and Elijah, talking to him. They appeared in glory and were speaking of his departure, which he was about to accomplish at Jerusalem. Now Peter and his companions were weighed down with sleep, but since they stayed awake, they saw his glory and the two men who stood with him. Just as they were leaving him, Peter said to Jesus, "Master, it is good for us to be here. Let us make 3 dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah," not knowing what he said. While he was saying this, a cloud came and overshadowed them, and they were terrified as they entered the cloud. Then from the cloud came a voice that said, "This is my son, my chosen. Listen to him." When the voice had spoken, Jesus was found alone. And they kept silent, and in those days told no one any of the things they had seen. The gospel of the Lord. I invite you to be seated.
Good. Check. You know, I checked my microphone this morning, and it was turned down. The volume. So I'm going to go turn it up right now because it's still too quiet. I don't know how that happens. It happened to you last week, too. There's something in here. I'm going to talk from back here because it's going to make me more comfortable. I'm actually going to deliver like an organist, so from right here. So good morning, all. Good morning. This is the life of an organist, huh? That's awkward. I don't know how you do it, Janet. Here we go. There we go. Sounds better. Can you hear me? There we go. All right. So, good morning. Thanks for your graciousness. That's not me. That puff was not me. That's not me. Whatever. Jeez, it's like my boss is sitting right behind my back. Anyway, have you ever been someplace? It is me. Have you ever been someplace so great or been on a vacation someplace so amazing that you just don't want to come back? Kristen's parents were kind enough to take Kristen and I to Tahiti on a sailing trip. And I will tell you, that was pretty amazing. And that was hard to come back from. We think the water in the Keys is nice, and it's very nice. But in Tahiti, you can't tell if the water is 5 feet deep or if the water is like 30 or 40 feet deep. That water is clear. You think the water driving over the bridge is nice on a nice day. There, the water is amazing. And then you add in those beautiful, lush mountains and the amazing people. We went to these places. We were on the sailboat. So like if you want to go up to a store for provisions or just to get some tourist things, you pull up to the stores on these islands, and the docks are so tiny and the sailboats are relatively large compared to the docks. And it's just this crazy, phenomenal experience. We went to this one, it's not a tourist deal, it was an ancient burial ground. And we pulled up and we went out to visit. And there are all these ancient structures. And one of them is this ancient seawall. And all these things are made out of coral and lava rock. And there's signs that say, please don't walk on these structures. And so I walked on the structures. And one of them was the seawall. And so the people there who were buried got so mad at me, the dead people. And they pushed me right into the water, onto to the coral that's growing right next to the shore. And so me, the tourist from the States, I destroyed part of their culture and an ancient culture and part of an ancient coral reef in just a matter of seconds. So go America. I was proud of that. But I'll have you know, those coral reefs, they have bacteria, right? The coral has a nice bacteria. So I got to take home a bacterial infection in my legs from Tahiti. So that was a gift from Tahiti. It was nice. But I had a nurse on the boat who took care of me, so that was okay. But despite that, it was a great trip. And we visited this plantation, vanilla plantation. And that was one place where Kristen and I were like, man, we could really stay here. And we had a conversation about it. And the owner of that plantation said, if you want to stay here, you can stay here. And we were like, what are you talking about? And we were in this big thatched structure that acted kind of like a store and a receiving area. And he pointed up. And it was like on the perimeter of it was like an apartment. And he's like, if you want to live here, I mean, dude, like you can live here. I'm like, you didn't see what I just did to your burial ground in Coral Reef, buddy. But we looked at each other and we're like, no, we got to go home. So we ultimately came home. But man, we didn't want to leave. And our experience was great. And our experience was amazing. But I don't know if it compared to the experience of Peter, James, and John on this hill, right? So Jesus said, hey, Peter, James, and John, let's go have a retreat on this mountaintop. And so Peter, James, and John said, we get to go hang out with Jesus on the mountain, let's go. And so they climbed up the mountain. And I can imagine when they got up there that the winds were coming. The air was clean and nice. It was not crowded. It was peaceful. It was relaxing. It gave them a time to rest, much needed rest. They were so tired that they fell asleep like they seem to always do. And when they awoke, they saw Jesus, and his clothes were shining, and his face looked different. But with Jesus were two dead guys, right? Moses and Elijah, and they appeared in glory. Now, man, this excited the disciples, and it especially excited excitable Peter. And Peter had to do something about it. He wanted to do something. So he said, hey, let's build some booths. Let's build tabernacles. Let's commemorate this moment, and let's stay. You know, I've got an idea. We're going to build you these booths, and I'm going to get us 3 easy chairs, and we're going to stake this out. Man, this is our new man cave. We're not going back down there because this has everything we need. This is it. This is what we've been waiting for. We're staying here. And so Peter decided that he was going to stay. That was the plan. One of my former pastors, John Ortberg, he said this. He said, the most dangerous object in our house is not power tools. It's not knives. It's not ladders. It's not even that untrustworthy, unholy pet cat. It is the easy chair. We call it something else, right? We call it a lazy boy. And Peter said, we're going to fill this place up here with lazy boys for us disciples. Now, I don't know the reason for that. You know, I don't know if the reason he wanted to stay was because he was excited that the divinity, that his thought of the divinity of Jesus was fulfilled, or that he saw here heaven crashing again into earth, or if he saw Moses and Elijah, 2 guys, coming back to earth, but glorified. I don't know the reason, but man, when he decided to plant his roots, God showed up, right? We heard that God showed up in a cloud, and that cloud enveloped them, and he heard the voice of God ask this question. God said to Peter, James, and John, this is my son. Listen to him. Follow him. Get off this mountain. See, God, I believe, has always been looking for partners in this kind of like restoration plan for earth. He's inviting us to partake in this. And so when Peter, James, and John heard this, they decided to vacate the plan of the man club, and they followed Jesus down that mountain. And we are invited to do the same. Man, I don't know what your Tahiti is. I don't know what your lazy boy is. I don't know if you like to hang out here in church. I don't know if you like to hang out on the beach. I don't know if you like to hang out in bars. I don't know where you all get recharged. And I'll tell you this, it is great to get recharged in your faith. It is important to be recharged in your faith. But to hang out there all the time, I don't think that's God's plan. God says you have to go down off the mountain. You have to get out. So do you hear that voice? Are you allowing yourself to be enveloped by that cloud? Are you willing to follow Jesus off that mountain? Because I'll tell you, there are people in this world who are in fear. There are people who are looking for your shining faces. And it's not like the Old Testament reading that we heard where you have to cover up with a veil, friends. People are ready to receive your shining faces of glory. So here's my question. Can you go into the world where those who suffer need comfort, where corruption needs to be confronted and corrected, and where the lonely need to be loved? Will you hear God's invitation to follow Jesus and be a light?